Even demo. For some reason, we can't find the slides if we lost them. Uh, so let's just postpone class for like 2 minutes. Yeah. We're gonna start with the demo first today because we can't find the slides. So I'm just gonna show you guys how to use advanced CSS selectors. Okay, so can someone tell me how I can link my CSS file to the HTML file? Yeah, we use the rel attribute. But what's the name of the HTML tag? Yeah, it's the link. So the A tag is what goes in the body, and that's how you link HTML files. But wait, I think you could link tag code. But if you're linking something like CSS, which is not content, then you have to use the link tag. Um, yeah, and let's see if it works. And there, it turns the H1 to red. Okay, so what if I want it to be black the entire time, but when I hover over it, then it turns red. You can't do that with regular CSS, right? Because that's interactivity. So we're gonna learn this new CSS selector called the hover selector. All you have to do is type in your selector, and then right after it, you want to do colon hover. The colon tells it that it's a special type of selector, and hover just means the event that it hovers, then you're gonna fire whatever styles are gonna be inside this. So when it hovers, I want to make it red, so I just do color red. Otherwise, it's gonna be color black. So whenever you hover over it, it's gonna be red, and then whenever you hover out of it, it's gonna be black. You can do this with all the selectors that you have. So let's do UL list I, and then you can give this a class of um list, and then inside the IL or LIs, you can put in uh, we have our two elements. I'll just make some more, and then we want to make it so that when you hover over every single one of these, it makes it red. So for that, we have to use the hover selector, but right now the hover selector is selecting H1. So we want to make a new one for the LIs. So to select the LIs that are inside of the H1 or inside of the UL, these ones, we can select the list first using dot list. It'll select all the elements with the class of list, and then we could use spacebar li to select all the LIs inside an element with the class of list, which are all these LIs because they're inside the UL with a class of list. And then we just do colon hover to change what it looks like when it's hovered. And we can just do color red. If we refresh, we can see whenever you hover over these, they each turn red. We can also change a lot of other styles about it. So um, you can change like we learn font size. We can just make it bigger so that whenever you hover over any of these, they're gonna get bigger. And as you can see, the other elements they get pushed back um, to reflect the same change. So if I hover over element two, element three, four, 3 and 4, they get pushed down the page to make space for element two. Okay, so this is the hover selector. Now there's another type of new selector. One second. Okay. Uh, Here we actually found the slides. Okay, let me just put it here. Okay, yeah. So the new selectors are called pseudo classes. Um, and you can know if it's a pseudo class if it says if there's a colon before the word. Okay, let's just look at the slides now since we found it. Okay, special selectors. This is how CoHS it changes the icon, the background color of the icon whenever the user hovers over it, and a lot of other sites use it for stuff like this, like hover effects. Okay, pseudo classes. This this tag you know before. It's the um, p tag, right? It's just a regular CSS rule. And we can add this pseudo selector on top of the CSS rule, on top of the selector, so then it changes the color only when this element is being hovered over, which I just showed you. This is the general format. It's selector colon, which lets you know everything after is going to be a pseudo class, and then you put the pseudo class, which is hover. Yeah, this can be any pseudo selector. Like I showed you, it could be a class and then like an li element inside of the class. And then this pseudo class, it can be any one of these pseudo class names, and then there's also more that we'll talk about later. We showed you guys hover, and then you can just put any CSS declarations inside of it. Okay, so this code, whenever the H2 elements are hovered over, it changes their color to red and their font style to italic. And then as you can see, whenever you hover off of it, it changes it back. automatically. You don't have to say on hover or anything like that. Okay. Uh, Here you can see the adjacent child selector. So if there's an H1 and there's an H2 that's directly after the H1, it'll select only those H2s. So here you can see this H2 is after the H3, which means that it will not get selected by the selector. And then you could use a colon hover over it. So you can use pseudo selectors with any selector that you have, including the adjacent child selector. Okay, if you use it um, on the body, it applies the same CSS rule to every element inside the body. So you could do H1, H2, H3, whatever's inside of your body will automatically get this. Okay, so here's some other pseudo classes. Um, colon link. This selects the unvisited links. So if you ever see the link is blue right now, when you click on it and go back, it changes color. It doesn't do it on slides, but on like Google and stuff, the link is usually purple, but then after you've clicked on it and you come back to the page, it's going to be like red or something. You could do that using the colon link and colon visited. They'll select whichever sites you've already visited before and which ones you haven't visited yet. Colon active selects the element that's currently being clicked on. So this is kind of like hover, except instead of triggering whenever you hover over it, you have to actually select the element for it to work. So here's how you usually style links. Whenever there's an unvisited page, you're going to use the link color that lets the user know that it's a link. And then after you visit the page, you can change it to a different color so that the user knows that they've already clicked on the link. They shouldn't go back. And then whenever you hover over it, you can also change the color to a different color. So then the user know that they know that they're hovering over the link. And then you can use active to show that they've clicked on the link. Yep. So whenever you hover over it, it changes the color to pink. Whenever you click on it, it turns it to purple. And then if you come back, it's going to be a visited link, so it's going to be green. So the hover has to come after um, a link and a visited. This is because you want when the user hovers over it, it has to change the color to pink at all times. Um, so if you put the selector after another selector, this was going to take priority. So imagine the link is already visited and you're hovering over it. If you put the hover over the visited, it's only going to change to green because the green is overriding the hover. So you want to make whatever ones have priority, you want them to be after the other ones. Browsers, they have default styling for links. Like links are blue when they're unvisited, like on Google. And you should only change these defaults if you have a good reason. Because if the user is used to these default stylings, then you should just use the default ones that the users already know. If you want to change them, then the user might not know what the new colors mean. So only change them if you actually have a good reason. Okay. Um, this this CSS rule, it selects the P elements that are currently being clicked, which is the active selector, and the H ones are actively being clicked. So whenever you use a comma, it selects both of these selectors um, at the same time, and then it applies these rules to both of them. So here's what happens whenever you click on a P or an H1, then it sets the background color to be yellow. Okay, so CSS pseudo elements, they allow us to style specific parts of an element's content. Um, okay, yeah, this one, uh, this is a special one. This one it has two colons because it's selecting part of the P. It's not selecting um like when it's hovered or when you click on it, it's selecting part of the P. You could do first letter and it'll select the first letter of the P element. And it'll set the color to dark green and the font size to 24 pixels. So here, every P element, its first letter will turn green and it'll have a font size of 24 pixels. Um, this format is kind of the same as the pseudo classes, except it has two colons. Selector can be any selector, and element could be first letter, first line. There's also others, and you can just put anything you want. Yeah, the difference is pseudo elements have two colons instead of one because they're part of the selector. Okay, so colon selects the first line of the element. So if you have a paragraph that has multiple lines, it'll only select the first one. First letter is the first letter before it inserts something that's it inserts um, something before the element. So imagine you have um, like a list of a bunch of cats, but you want to do like cat calico instead of just doing the name of the cat. Then you can use the before to insert whatever you want before each of those list elements. Same thing for after. And selection, it selects the portion of the element currently selected by the user. So um, if you're highlighting things using your highlighting, then it'll select these two parts of the paragraph element, and then you could style them however you want. Okay, so this is the before pseudo element. So um, for a pseudo element, like before and after, you need to use a content. Content has to be whatever you insert before or after the element, and it's the text that's actually going to show up. In this case, it's listen up, and you need to put it in between quotes. And this is what it does. It basically just inserts this line below the or before the actual P element, and then it sets the color to green. Okay, so here's how you style the user selection. You could just use the selection pseudo element and then style it however you want. And then, as you can see, the background's dark blue instead of light blue, how it usually is. That's the default. Okay, you can combine multiple pseudo class or multiple special CSS selectors like colon active and colon after. So what do you guys think this is going to do? It has the active, which is what happens when you click over it, and after, which goes after the element. And then you can see the content. So every after needs content, every before also needs content. Content, it's, let me go back. So when you're using before, it inserts this content before the element. So you want to put something in this so that you can actually see what they're inserting. So I'm a P element and Hey Me Too. Those are two different P elements, and none of those have listen up before them. But you see how when you use the content in the before pseudo element, it adds those into the HTML. Okay. Um, after you click the P, it's gonna say thanks before the P. Yeah. So after you click over each of these P elements, it says um, thanks because then it applies to after. It doesn't apply to after unless you're actively clicking on it. Okay, so we can look at some examples. Okay, I already showed you hover, but imagine that instead of making it bigger, uh, we want to make it say hello after you hover over it. Um, what we could do is after you hover over it, then we can add an after. And then as you guys can see, it doesn't do anything right now because every time that you add an after, you need to use content content attribute in your CSS. And then you can set this to whatever you want. You can make it empty and then it's just not going to do anything. Or you can make the content like hello or just make it hover. And then it just um, says hover right after the element. You can make this after before and it still works because it still has the content. Okay, so here we have a lot of different selectors. We have the class, we have the element selector, which is li, um, pseudo class, which is hover, and then the before. Okay, how about something inside of the li, like another ul, and then another li. We can make this ol. Okay, so now there's li's inside of these li's. So you can see whenever you hover over them, um it still does the tag because right now it's selecting all the li's inside of list, and these li's are inside of this list. So if you wanted to change that, you can make it direct using this, and then keep everything else the same. So it only selects the li's that are direct descendants of lists or children. So now it'll select all of these. You guys can see when I'm hovering over these li's, it's still selecting this H1. That's because these li's are actually part of this bigger li. So right now I'm still hovering over element one because I'm hovering over a list that's inside of element one. Okay, for today's activity, we have a CSS battle. Okay, let me just put this link in the chat. We can play today's. So just go to CSS battle, go to daily targets. So what this does is it gives you a target every day. You can see this is yesterday's. You don't know tomorrow's yet. And then your task is using HTML and the style attribute, which lets you type in CSS styles. You have to recreate this target or this image. You can see right now our image is just a div square with orange as a background color. It tells you what all the colors in the image are. So if you wanted to use this square, use the same color as this square on your square, then you can just paste in your color that gives you. You can see that it gives you most of the colors on the thing, or actually it gives you all of them. Uh, this is kind of a complicated target. Here we can find a simpler one. Wait, these are these are way more complicated. But yeah, you can see that there's a lot of battles. Some of them really impressive. Okay, this one I think is everyone's first. This is everyone's first battle. So you can see this rectangle. It's a lot bigger than the rectangle that we're given. And then there's a background color. So what do we have to set To make the background this color, we have to set the body of the document. So if we just set the body's background color, yeah, you can see that we're getting closer to like making the same pattern. Um, so right now we have the same background color, but the only difference is um, we have a really small square that's orange, and they have a really big square that's this color. You can also click this diff, and it'll show you what the difference is between yours and theirs. Wherever this black, it means that it's the exact same, and that makes sense because we have a brown background and they have brown background. Okay, let's try to recreate the square. Okay, how should we make this square bigger? Because right now it has a width of 100, height of 100. Yeah, 200, 200. Yeah, we could just guess and check. So usually they don't give you the measurements for whatever it is, but if you guess and check, you can use to figure it out. So if we set the width to 200, you can see that the width of the div changes. You do the same thing for the height. And then right now you see that there's this sort of space between your div and the background, but theirs didn't have this space. So what property do you think that this is? Padding? Okay, yeah, we can use translation. So padding, it is space inside of the element. So if we think of this as the body, the space inside would be the padding. So we could set the padding to like 10. You can see that the padding inside increases. But if we set the padding to 0, um, you'll see it's the exact same. And that's because every single element has a padding of 0 by default. But what everything doesn't have is a margin of 0. So margin is this, okay, wait, it didn't work. Yeah, I'll just show you the box model. So we can go to this, any site that we have, like Google, and then if you click inspect element, you can use the inspector. Um, and then you could use this mouse thing, which lets you select any element on the page. So let's just select this Google sign, and then we can go to computed. Okay, so every element, including this image, it has the content, which is the actual size, the padding, which is what's inside. Right now, the Google is empty, so it doesn't have any padding. Border, which is what happens when you add border, and then margin, which is the outside space of the element. So let's look at theirs. Okay, so this is the content of the body, right? Or content of what their thing is. They don't have any margin, any border. And then um, ours also has content of 400 by 300. That's because the canvas size is 400 by 300. We can also use this on page right here. If we use a selector, we can select any element that we have on the page. You can see that it all has a content because it actually has text. But it all has 0 padding, 0 border, and 0 margin. So let's see what happens when we add some padding. So we have to give it some margin of 10 pixels and some padding of 10 pixels. And then we can use a selector to select this H1 element. So you just drag it over, and then you can see the content is blue, which is the actual text. The padding is 10 pixels. You can see it even says right here, 10 pixels. And that's what happens when you give it padding. It just makes space inside the element. You can see this better if you use background color like red or something. So background color, it colors everything that's inside of the element. And padding, it adds space inside of the element. So you can see Um, Decreasing the padding decreases the space that the background color is in, and increasing it increases the space that the background color is in. Um, but the margin, it adds space outside of the element. So this margin will never have any background color over it. That's because it's outside the element, and background color only colors things inside of the element. So we could take a look at this using the inspector. So the content is the actual text, the padding, which we added is 10 pixels. And as you can see, this red part, that's the padding. And it's colored red because the background color colors everything inside, including the padding. It has no border, and the margin is 20 pixels. And this is not inside the element, which is why it's not colored red. You can also give it some border. So let's just say border 10 pixels, solid, and then we can make it blue. This gives it a border, and then you can see if we hover over it, the border is 10 pixels, which is the blue part. Padding is inside, just 10 pixels, and then margin is the things outside. Um, yeah, so we can do margin zero. This is just the three properties that you can use in CSS battles, and also it's part of the box model. Okay, so you refresh. I don't know why it's not working. We're gonna be making a website, I think like tomorrow or something. Yeah, you have to make a custom website. Okay, there we go. So, uh, the body is the actual thing that has margin. So let's take a look at our sandbox. Um, okay, so here's the body. We can color the body so we can actually see it, make it like red or something. So this body, it covers the entire length of the page, right? Um, but here you guys can see if we select the body has content, which is everything inside the page. It has no margin, no border, but it has padding, or it has margin. Um, and this margin is default for every page. So in here, um, if we don't have this margin zero, it sets the default margin of 8 on the body of the element. So you have to always set margin to 0 to delete that. And then now you can see using the difference or using slide and compare, it's almost exactly the same size. Now we just need to change the color. So what property do we change in the div to change the color of the div? So again, this color. Okay, so we could try color. Um, so remember, color is for your text. So color only changes the color of your text. But right now this div is completely empty, it has no text inside. If we do add some text inside, you can see the text inside turns the color that we give it. So if we give it green, the text inside turns green. But since we're dealing with an empty element, um, it's not color. It's actually background. So if you're setting the color of the text, you gotta use color. If you're setting the color of the background or the actual element itself, then you gotta use background. Background just like background. It's the same. And then you change the background color, then it looks the exact same. You can use the difference, and since everything's black, that tells you that there's no differences between what you submitted and whatever they have as the target. And you just submit it, and then it tells you the match. there it says 100% match. So we basically hit the target. Okay, so yeah, the system we don't really have one right now. So let me okay, so the homework is 3.9 and 3.17. Here, let me check. Okay, yeah, it's 3.16. And I'll just tell you guys the slides. That's good. Okay, so you guys should try the CSS battles. I'll post a link here. Yeah, so today's activity is a CSS battles normally game kit. Um, and then the homework is going to be on the CSS pseudo selectors and pseudo elements that we use. So hover after, before, and then all of those. Okay, that's it for today.